Hello everyone, welcome to Talisman's Library. I am Talisman, this is my library, and in today's video we're going to look at the books that I read for July of 2025. Now there is quite a few to get through, there's 9 in total. Technically 8, 9, you'll understand what I mean by that when I get to the books. This is probably the most I've ever read in a month, usually it's about 4 or 5, so this is quite an effort for me, just for the record. I'm not a huge fast-paced reader. I like to read at my own time, my own pace. But yeah, for 8 to 9 books for the month, that's pretty good for me. Once again, I'll get to that when we get to it. Just some general housekeeping before we go too far, though. With my book reviews, I don't do star ratings, purely because what I would consider, a really good book that maybe a 4 or 5 star, someone else may turn around and go, that's only a 1 or 2, maybe a 3 at a push, So I don't like that. I only like giving you my general thoughts and opinions and then letting you go from there. Which leads me into my next point. I have my own thoughts and opinions like everybody else, and you may feel differently about something, and that's okay. If you disagree with it, please do not take what I'm saying as hate or a personal attack or anything like that. It's just purely my own thoughts and opinions, and we're allowed to agree to disagree. But maybe if you want to discuss anything, I'm more than happy to listen to what you've got to say. Maybe we can find some common ground. You just never know. With that said, though, we might get straight into the first book. And also, just before I go too far, I've got some notes here just in case I forget something. So if you see me look down here, it's just looking at my notes to refresh my memory of things. Okay. So the first book off the ranks, this is the technicality one I was referring to. It is a book that I started at the end of June, towards the end of June, the start of July. I finished it on July 1st. So I'm classifying it as a July read, even though technically it started in June. So that's the technicality. That's the 9th book and that book is The Other People by C.B. Everett. Now, this book is about 10 strangers who wake up in a manor. They're all locked in there together. They have no recollection of how they got there, and they have no knowledge of each other up until this point. There is no history, no connection, nothing. And while they're in the manor, they are informed that there has been a young woman who's been abducted, and she is buried somewhere within the manor. These 10 strangers have 12 hours to find her. If they don't, she will die and so will they. But if they can find her and get out, great, they survive. The twist is there is a killer in the house there with them. It could be one of them. So they'll have to not only have to find this young woman, but also get out alive. And that's the basic premise of the story. Now, it is a psychological thriller, and it gave me very similar vibes to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is a really, really good book. I really enjoyed it from start to finish. It is dark and gritty at times. The characters are very diverse, but it's not forced or for no reason. Like, there is a reason why they're so diverse, which is really good. Each character has very obvious flaws and things that you will like or not like about them. Some characters, you'll probably be like me, where if you read it, you find that there's certain characters in there that you felt nothing for at all. Like, they were just so common and bland, but not horrible. Like, they weren't bad. It was just, you didn't really connect with them like some of the others. It is, like I said, it is dark, it is gritty, it is very psychological, and it deals with a lot of elements such as race, class, self-doubt, self-worth, racism, sexism, ageism. It also goes into and explores different things like, assault, SA. I don't want to go into too much stuff to do with children. It's really gritty, really dark, but if you can get past some of it, it's a really good book. there's some things in it that I did not like, but I persevered through it, and yeah, I came out through the other end really appreciating this more. The ending is something you don't see coming, and it's only when you step back and look at it and put all the connections together that it really makes a lot more sense. It's like the conspiracy board, you know, how you got all the strings and all the papers going everywhere across the room, and it's only when you step back and take everything in that the picture starts to form. That's what happens in this book. I love it. If you're anything like me, there is a character in here that you will instantly love. They are a reoccurring character throughout the entire book. They've got their own chapter dedicated to themselves. I'm not going to say much more without spoiling it. I highly recommend it. Definitely geared towards the older teens to adults. But if you're someone who has dealt with anything to do with children, or experienced anything that happened with children, assault or SA, probably a miss for you, because it does lean into it quite heavily, but definitely recommend it if you're in for it or up for it. Okay, so let me just reset this now, because the next book is Sunderworld Volume 1, The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry. And this is written by Ransom Riggs. The story follows Leopold Berry. He's a teenager, and he's in love with this science fiction or fictional TV series from the 90s called Max's Adventures in Sunderworld. Leopold's dad is a very overbearing character for him, and they don't get along. They don't understand each other. And Leopold uses this TV show as an escape to get away from his troubles in life. But on one particular day, he discovers that magic is real, and that Sunderworld is real, and that he believes that it's up to him to save it from a dark fate. So that's pretty much the story of it. There is a bit more to it, but I want to keep it, spoiler free. The catchphrase for this book is, well, I've got to find it here. When you're never the chosen one, sometimes you have to choose yourself. And I think that perfectly encapsulates this book. Leopold is a character who suffers a lot of setbacks and, disappointments throughout his life. And sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're shocking, sometimes they're just, oh my God, like it's like a facepalm, like how in the world did that happen? It happens throughout the entire book. Everything is a setback for him or a disappointment in some way, shape or form. Which was interesting. It was a very weird look at the start, but you appreciate more as the story goes on. It's definitely a very different book. It felt more like a setup rather than a fully flushed out story, which was one thing against it. But otherwise, it was a really good read. I don't want to give too much away because I want people to actually give it a chance. My biggest disappointment, besides the fact that it was more of like a setup, is that Sunderworld wasn't really properly explored, and the magic in it wasn't properly used or exposed. You can get a full sense of its scale or what it could do. That was as big a disappointment for it. It was an okay read. I wouldn't say it was my favourite read of the month. It was okay. It had a fast pace to it. Overall, it's a pretty good book. One you could pick up and read and, just enjoy on a lazy Saturday afternoon or Sunday. But that's about it. I think if you're going to read it, teenager more so than adult, but it wasn't a bad read. Give it a go if you're interested. The next one was a little bit of a disappointment for me, I'm not going to lie. And that was Dollhouse by Anya Allen. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, this is young adult horror. The story is set in Australia, and it follows Cassandra and her friends. Now, let me get this right. Aisha, Lacey, and Ethan. They are doing a school project and they go into a place called the Devil's Hole to investigate some flora and fauna within the area for the project. And while they're there, they find all these dolls hanging from trees and an old, very creepy-looking manor within the woods. And after some events that happened, their friend Aisha disappears. Then 2 weeks later, Aisha's body has not been discovered. She's still missing. The police believe that there's some foul play at foot, but they can't pin it on anyone. And when they do pin it on someone, it turns out it could be the wrong person, or it's believed it's the wrong person. So Cassandra, Ethan, and Lacey decide to take it upon themselves to find their missing friend and solve what happened. What they find is, and it's no spoiler, it's on the back of the synopsis, but what they find is a life-size dollhouse with a very dark past. And the more they look for their friends, the more they find out that they're caught in a trap with no way out. That's basically the premise of the book. Now, for my thoughts on it, as I said, it's a young adult book, and when I was researching different books to read, this one popped up as a highly recommended horror novel. I thought I'd give it a go. It was okay, but this is about as horrifying or horrific as The Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors. Not very scary at all. More, okay, we're watching it, and sometimes it might be a little interesting, sometimes it might be funny, but it's not scary. The premise of the book sounds good. However, I felt that the execution wasn't done well. What I mean by that is there's a line at the start of the book which I thought, oh, okay, that's what it's going to be about, because they're setting up, this. And they took that line, threw it out the window, and went a completely different direction. And I went, okay, well, what's the point of that line then? Because it didn't make sense. Now, that's my own thoughts and opinions being thrusted onto the book, which is probably why it was a bit of a letdown for me. But it just didn't click to me the way I thought it would. For a highly recommended horror book, it wasn't as good as I thought it was. You might find it very interesting. If you're interested, please check it out. It is geared towards people who are looking for a gateway into horror. I would say that would probably be a good starting point, where it's maybe a little bit scary for you at the bits and pieces, but it's not like, oh my god, this is the scariest thing ever, or oh, I'm shaking because it's all right. But yeah, definitely geared towards teenagers or people looking for a gateway into horror. The next one was another horror book, but I actually really enjoyed it a lot more. And I'll just get my notes up here. And that is Cult of the Spider Queen by S.A. Sidor. S.A. Sidor. And this book is set during the 1920s, or roughly in the 1920s. It has the main character, Andy von Nortwick. He's a reporter for Arkham Advertiser, the Arkham Advertiser. It's a newspaper. And one day, Andy intercepts a parcel containing a film with footage of an actress by the name of Maud Byron. She is an actress who went to the Amazon River and never came back. So he's now intrigued about this. And as he looks into the parcel more, he finds a note in there that says that Maud is still alive, and he thinks, okay, well, if she's alive, she needs help. We might have to go and find her. And he uses that as a way to go to the Amazon. While he's going there with his team, they hear legends of the legendary god known as the Spider Queen. And as they begin traveling through the dense jungle and river, the more treacherous the adventure starts to become, and soon they will learn who and what the Spider Queen is. That's basically the premise of the story. And this is an actual proper horror. It gives me a lot of vibes to the black and white films of the 1920s. And it's got that sort of feel to it throughout the book. This book was creepy. It had moments where I felt shivers down my spine because it was written in such a graphic and detailed way that you couldn't help it. The plot was decent. It was fast-paced. The characters were really good and flushed out. I actually found myself liking a character in this book called Ursula more than I liked Andy's character. Ursula is, when you read her, you'll understand, but she's like the party leader trying to keep them safe, and she is really well written. Andy felt a little bit flat to me. I just couldn't click with him enough, but otherwise, it was a really good story. My biggest criticism with the entire book was I felt the Spider Queen was mentioned quite a lot, but she was underutilized compared to the rest of the story. Otherwise, definitely worth checking it out if you're interested, and I would highly recommend reading it, especially if you like period sort of feels to books, or if you're interested in a little bit of horror. Definitely want to go with better than The Dollhouse by a long shot. The fifth book that I read in July was Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the second book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and it follows on directly from the events of the first book. It is set in 1888 and follows Audrey Rose Wadsworth and Thomas Cresswell. They are two young adults who are studying forensic medicine and science, and they are traveling to Romania to continue their studies. The academy that they're going to is being held inside a castle that was once owned by Vlad the Impaler, otherwise known as Dracula. While they're traveling there, they witness a murder, and the murder happens to have elements that are linked to the mythos of Dracula. As they start their studies, more bodies start piling up, and the people of Romania are now more panicked than ever that Dracula has returned from beyond the grave. This will lead Thomas and Audrey to investigate the murders, and while doing so, they uncover some dark secrets that could lead them to Dracula. I'm not going to say much more because it will spoil the synopsis, but that's basically the premise of the story. This, like I said, is set in 1888, and it follows directly on from the first book. If you picked up and read the first book, you could pick this one up straight away, and it flows straight in. It's like no time was lost, or in between the books. It is one of my favourite series of all time. I can't praise this series enough, and Kerri Maniscalco has written a fantastic set of books. The chemistry between Audrey and Thomas is very interesting. Because it's set in 1888, the language and the themes and the ideas are all present from that time period, and they're written really well. Audrey is a young woman who is brought up to be a woman of high standards, a woman of high social standing. But she wants to continue that, but also wants to go against the grain a little bit and carve her own path. And how she is written, how she acts and talks and all that, it's led her to become one of my favorite characters of all time. She's written really, really well. Thomas Cresswell is a very analytical person. He is very much like a Sherlock Holmes type of character, where he will analyze something down to the minute detail and, analyze a person's behavior or their words, their actions, what they wear. He is really well done, really well written. But he's also very much a person who doesn't pick up on social cues. So he's got that bit of a flaw to his character. Like I said, the chemistry between them is really good. Thomas continuously flirts with Audrey, and although it is set in 1888 and language and ideas and themes are very different, the flirting comes across as very erotic, which to me was different, and I enjoy that. And yeah, it's very interesting for me because I'm not a huge romance sort of person, but I enjoyed that aspect of this book and how they interact and bounce off each other in a way and get their ideas out. It's really well done. It is a very gritty and dark book, and it does have great atmosphere, great tone. The world itself felt real. Everything has gravity and weight to it. There's consequences to actions. It was really, really well done. I can't praise this book enough. If you're interested, I would say probably older teens to adults would definitely love this book. And hopefully you pick it up and read it. If you're going to do it, I suggest getting the first one, which is Stalking Jack the Ripper, and then follow it straight into this one. They are fantastic books, and I don't think you'll be disappointed if you gave it a shot. I don't want to ramble on too much more with it because I probably will if I got the opportunity. I'll move on to the next one. I'll just get my list up here. The sixth book that I read in July was Path of Thorns by A.G. Slater. Now, this story doesn't have a time period or anything that's really set in. It's a bit ambiguous in that way, but it follows a young woman by the name of Asha Todd. She takes the job of governess to the Merwood family, who live in this village. And while she's there, she not only looks after the children, but she also starts using what many would call as witchcraft to heal a lot of the sick and injured around the town. While she's going about this, more about her reasons for becoming the governess starts to come out, and it looks like she's there for revenge. Now, I'm not going to say much more because that will spoil it, but that's basically the premise of the story. It is geared as a gothic fairy tale. Now, it does have elements of Red Riding Hood in this, and there's a lot of other, how do I put it, religious tones and undertones to it. It's a very unique story, something that I like fairy tales, especially twists on fairy tales. This is definitely it. It was hard to get into at the start because there was things that didn't make sense, or that you're sort of wondering, why is this relevant, or how the hell did that happen? And it's not until much later that it's revealed as to what's actually going on that it starts to make more sense. So you've got to persevere with it. Asha is a very well-written character. You can't help but feel for her. Some of the things that happen in her life are very tragic. Some of the things that she experiences are very almost heartbreaking in a way. But you can't help but be drawn to her. I don't know what else I can really say without spoiling it. Definitely give it a go if you're interested in fairy tales, if you're interested in gothic sort of undertones. I would highly recommend it. There is instances of violence and assault in this book, even child assault to children. If you have experienced that, I would probably give this one a miss. But I would say if you're interested in it, definitely check it out. It's worth the read. More geared towards, older teens. Some adults may find it very interesting, especially if they like it, but definitely towards older teens. There is some erotic moments in it, but they're more implied rather than stated outright on the page. I can't really give much more away than that, but they're very few and far between. So, yeah, you take that as you will. I still enjoyed it. Highly recommend it if you like that sort of thing. The next one, and I'll just get my notes up for it, was one that came completely out of left field in a way. I didn't realise that something like this existed, and boom, there it was. And that was Black Tide by Casey Jones. This is a story that is about a 20-something-year-old woman by the name of Beth. She is a house sitter. She travels to a place called Strawberry Dunes to look after the house of a family while they're away on vacation. And while she's there, she's also looking after their Labrador by the name of Jake. While she's there, she meets her neighbour, a man by the name of Mike, and he's in his 30s, roughly. It's not really stated what their ages are, but it just gives you that sort of implication. And they bond over a bit of a bonfire, share some stories, and they end up spending the night together. The next day, they wake up to a meteor shower and the end of the earth, or end of the world. That's basically the premise. If you are a fan of A Quiet Place, the movie, you will love this book. It has elements similar to the movie, but very, very different. I don't want to say much more without spoiling that part, but you'll understand what I mean by it if you read it. It is a creature feature. It has very dark and gritty sort of tones and implications. There's weight and consequences to actions. The characters, both of Mike and Beth, they are so different from each other, yet so similar, and the chemistry between them is amazing. Beth describes herself as a bit of a train wreck. She describes herself as the car that drives through people's living rooms and destroys them and their lives, their homes, everything. She believes that everything she touches, she destroys. But she also wants to prove that ideology wrong. Mike is a person who is suffering from a bit of trauma that's happened in his life, and he's a bit depressed, and he's trying to navigate that. So they're very similar in a way, but they're polar opposites, and they find out, or you find out throughout the book, that they will need each other, and whether they survive or not is a different story, but they do need each other. And I love that about it. Everything that happened in the book had gravity and weight to it. The characters were flushed out. There's not many characters within the book. There's very few, but the ones in there are amazing to watch. Creature feature book. Loved it from start to finish. It's only 100 or 240 pages, so you can fly through it really quickly. If you're a fan of the end of the world sort of scenarios, A Quiet Place, or anything like that, I would highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed. My biggest criticism of the entire book was that most of it was spent on the beach, as you can probably tell by the cover, which was fine, but to me, I wish I could have seen more of the destruction of Earth and what was actually going on more. My biggest highlight for the book was there is a radio conversation between Beth and another character that had the most atmosphere and the most gripping conversation of the entire book, and just thinking about it gets me all excited because it was really, really well done. Highly recommend it. I can't praise this book enough. If you're interested, please pick it up. I would say because it does have some implied erotic moments, more for older teens and adults. But yeah, definitely one to check it out if you're interested. Okay, I'll just get the next one up. But the next one was a bit of a hit and miss for me. It's really hard to describe, but I'll try my best. And that was The Paleontologist by Luke Durness. Now, this one is described as Night at the Museum meets Michael Crichton and Stephen King. The story follows Simon Neatley, a paleontologist who is haunted by the disappearance of his younger sister Morgan, who disappeared from the Hawthorne Museum many years ago. Her body was never found, and no one was caught for held responsible for it. After growing up, Simon returns to the museum during 2019 to 2021. That's where it's set, during the COVID outbreak. And he is now put in charge of the paleontology department and to getting the museum back up to standard for reopening. While he's there, strange sounds start occurring, large bloody footprints appear, and a prehistoric presence can be felt following him and stalking him throughout the museum. Is Simon losing his mind, or is he possibly being stalked by something? Simon will investigate this and hopefully find his missing sister in the process. That's the premise of the book, and once again, it's Michael Crichton, Stephen King meets Night at the Museum. That's how it was described. It is like that, but it's not. It's really, really hard to explain. Basically, like I said before, it's set during COVID, 2019 to 2021, somewhere in that time frame, more towards the tail end, I'd say, so 2020, 2021. And yes, it has great atmosphere. It has great setup and build of tension and horror throughout it. Simon is a very interesting character who is dabbling with, is he losing his mind, or is he just still grief-stricken and over the loss of his sister? He hasn't got closure for that. He's not seeking closure. Everyone around him is sort of distancing themselves from him because of the fact that he's not dealing with his grief. He's taking his anger and frustration out of everyone around him. So they got that element. There is quite a few things that I think weren't explored enough within this book. There is also a heavy, heavy focus on his missing sister, which was fine. That's part of the story. But I felt that it took away the elements of the horror elements that they were building up to. There's quite a few concepts also that I felt were underutilized a lot in this book. Was it a good read? Yes. Was it groundbreaking and, what I expected it to be? Not really. It sort of subverted expectations a little bit here and there. It was still really good, still really gripping. I would highly encourage you to give it a try if you're interested. But just don't go in there expecting, prehistoric creatures every few pages, or that. It's more implied, and I'm not going to say much more, but it is really good, really dark, really gruesome. If you're someone who has a weak stomach, or if you're a bit sensitive to something that happens to children, probably not for you. But otherwise, really good. Because of the themes it has in it, I would gear it towards adult reading more than anything, but still really good. And I hope you enjoy it too if you decide to give it a read. Now, we come to the last book, and that was Start a Villain by John Calzi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This was a book that I started and finished within 2 days, and I finished it on the 31st of July, believe it or not. So this book follows, and just want to get my notes up again. This book follows Simon. He is an average sort of bloke who dreams of owning a pub. However, his financial position isn't the best, and his bank is turning down a loan, so he can't go for this pub that he wants. However, he receives word that his estranged uncle has passed away, and Simon inherits his fortune. And at first it doesn't seem like a lot, but then he realizes that his uncle was actually a supervillain and he's inherited his evil empire. As Simon then starts to navigate his new position, all of his uncle's enemies and competitors start coming out of the woodworks and are now putting Simon within their targets. That's the premise of the story. It was a really, really good book, and one that intrigued me straight away. It gave me a lot of James Bond, early James Bond, Austin Powers sort of villain vibes. Dr. Evil and Ernst Stavro Blofeld. So that sort of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. The evil volcano lairs and the over-the-top thematics of how to kill somebody and all that sort of thing. It's a really, really good book. I loved Simon's character. He's a character who is a bit naive at times, but also very competent, very how do I word this? Very unsure of himself, yet knows what he wants and how to achieve it. He's a bit of a mixed bag, but it works. There's a lot of humor within this book. It is heavily humored, and my favorite part is the dolphins that are in the book. And if you've read the book, you'll understand what I mean. If you don't, give it a shot. Give this a read. You'll understand. There's a lot of language and inappropriate things mentioned within the book, but it just works really, really well and fits the tone of the story. Once again, if you're a fan of James Bond, Austin Powers, and I'm talking about early James Bond, like Sean Connery's versions, George Lazenby, Roger Moore sort of style, you will really enjoy this sort of story. My biggest disappointment was that I had this idea in my head of how it was going to end, and I was prepared for that ending. When the ending came, it was good, real good. But because I built up this expectation, I let myself down. And that, I think, is my biggest criticism. It's not the book itself. The book itself was wonderful. It was me putting that expectation on it. And I need to stop that, because I see that happening a couple of times throughout the books I've reviewed so far. That was the letdown for me, but it still had a really good ending. It made sense. Everything was, really explored and flushed out. Please give it a go. I highly recommend it. I think you will really enjoy it, just like you will enjoy most of these books, if not all of them, depending on your taste. But I would really encourage you to get into it and give it a go, if you're interested. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you made it this far, please hit the like button and comment on what book interests you. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions about them. Or if you have a recommendation for me to read, let me know. I would love to hear what you've got to say. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to see you in the next video.